Hi guys, tonight we're walking into the first silver light of human history, where the ground itself seems to whisper, and a pale metal waits under dust, river stones, and moonlit hills. Imagine kneeling beside a cold stream at dusk. The water murmurs over your fingers, the air smells of wet clay, smoke, and crushed grass. Something bright catches your eye. Not gold, not bone, not shell, but a soft white gleam that looks almost borrowed from the moon. Who first picked it up? Who first wondered whether this little shining thing was a gift, a warning, or just nature showing off again? Because apparently nature enjoys being dramatic, so before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, and while you get comfortable, comment where you're listening from and your local time, because somewhere out there, another sleepy traveller is entering the same silver glow. Now, dim the lights and let yourself step into a world without clocks, as without maps, without the heavy names of empires, where people learn the language of metals by touch, fire, accident, and patience. You are standing in the deep ancient past, as when the night sky feels closer than it does now. There are no city skylines, no electric windows, no restless traffic humming through the dark. Above you, the stars are sharp enough to seem almost cold, and the moon hangs low, bright and watchful. Around a small settlement, dogs stir in their sleep, a fire cracks softly, the scent of ash drifts across packed earth. Somewhere nearby, a potter smooths clay with damp hands. A child turns a bead between finger and thumb, and an elder tells a story about stones that shine like water. Silver begins not as a world currency, not as treasure fleets, not as the polished spoon that later makes soup feel strangely important. It begins as a material mystery. In some places, native silver occurs in small, irregular pieces, bright threads or nuggets formed by geological processes over immense stretches of time. You reach down and hold a fragment, and it is cooler than the air, smooth in one place, rough in another, with a quiet weight that makes it feel more serious than an ordinary pebble. It does not glow by itself, of course, but in firelight it behaves as though it remembers the moon. Long before people understand chemistry, they understand attention. They notice that certain stones behave differently near heat. They notice that malachite gives green, ochre gives red, gold stays stubbornly golden, and silver, when coaxed out of ore, has a pale shine unlike anything else. Its brightness is gentle but insistent. Gold shouts, copper warms, silver listens. One mainstream historical fact rests firmly beneath your feet. Here, silver was used by ancient civilizations in the Near East, Anatolia, Egypt, the Aegean, and beyond, many thousands of years ago. Some of the earliest known worked silver objects come from the 4th millennium BCE, when communities were already experimenting with mining, smelting, trade, and symbolic display. You can picture these objects not as museum labels, but as things held by living hands. A small cup, a pin fastening cloth, a bead pressed against the skin, a vessel placed with the dead. Because even the journey beyond life, people thought, might require beauty. You walk toward a workshop at the edge of a settlement. It is not a grand foundry, not yet. It is more like a smoky corner of human curiosity. The ground is uneven. Your sandals or bare feet feel grit and straw beneath them. There is a furnace, low and hot, breathing in the dark like an animal. Bellows sigh. Charcoal snaps. A worker leans close, eyes narrowed against heat, using tools that seem simple until you remember that every tool is a sentence in a language humanity had to invent. Stone, clay, wood, skin, flame, air. These are the early verbs of metallurgy. Silver rarely makes its entrance alone. It is often tangled with lead ores. especially galena, a heavy and glittering mineral that can look like broken dark mirrors. Ancient metal workers learned that silver could be separated from lead through cupellation, a process that sounds elegant in a textbook and rather less elegant when you're standing beside the furnace breathing smoke. Lead is heated in a porous vessel. Oxygen does its patient work. Impurities are drawn away, and silver remains, pale and precious. Of course, no one wakes up one morning and says, "Today I shall master cupellation," while stretching calmly beside a goat. Knowledge grows through trial, mistake, memory, and probably a few moments of coughing, disappointment, and blaming the apprentice. The air smells metallic, dry, and bitter. Heat presses against your face. You hear the dull scrape of tools, the hush of ash settling, the low voice of someone giving instructions. When a tiny bead of silver appears, it is not merely useful. It is astonishing. It is proof that the earth has hidden brightness inside darkness. That idea alone is enough to make the metal sacred. In ancient Egypt, silver was at times rarer than gold, because Egypt had more access to gold deposits in the eastern desert and Nubia than to local silver sources. So when silver appears in Egyptian tombs and luxury goods, it can carry an especially high status. You can imagine an Egyptian artisan holding a thin sheet of silver, hammering it carefully, listening to its muted ring. Gold may belong to the burning sun, but silver belongs to the moon, to coolness, to night journeys, to gods whose names pass softly through temple halls. And here comes a quirky little tidbit, the kind history leaves tucked in a drawer for anyone patient enough to open it. In several ancient cultures, silver became associated with purity, the moon, and protection, and much later, in folklore scattered across Europe and elsewhere, silver gained a reputation for repelling evil creatures. Werewolves, naturally, got the worst public relations treatment. That idea belongs to later legend, not the first silver workers, but it grows from the same strange feeling people have around the metal, that it is clean, cold, and somehow watchful. A bit unfair to wolves, perhaps, but bedtime history is full of reputational damage. You continue walking, the settlement fades behind you, and the wider ancient world opens in soft darkness. Silver is already moving, not quickly, not in the roaring way of modern trade, but hand to hand, village to village, valley to valley. A bead travels farther than the person who made it. A cup passes into a tomb. A small ingot becomes a promise. Before coinage, silver can still serve as value by weight. It can be weighed on balances, cut, exchanged, gifted, hoarded, displayed. You hear the faint clink of pieces placed in a pan. The little pause as everyone watches the scale settle. Trust, even then, has a sound. Historians still argue whether early silver use spread mainly through migrating craftspeople, trade networks, local experimentation, or some restless mixture of all three. The evidence is tantalizing but incomplete. An object may be found in one region, its ore may have come from another, its style may resemble a third, and suddenly the past behaves like a sleepy cat refusing to sit where scholars would prefer. Is this proof of long-distance exchange? Is it imitation? Is it loot? Is it a diplomatic gift? The silver does not answer. It only gleams. You find yourself near a burial ground. The atmosphere changes. The night grows quieter, not empty, but attentive. A grave has been prepared with care. The living place objects beside the dead pottery, tools, ornaments, perhaps a silver piece if the family or community can afford such a thing. The soil smells damp and mineral rich. Someone's hand trembles slightly as they lower a precious object into the earth. You feel the coolness of it through cloth. Why give treasure to someone who cannot spend it? Because value has never been only about buying and selling. Sometimes value means memory. Sometimes it means status carried into eternity. Sometimes it means love, made visible, then hidden again. Silver's softness helps explain its intimacy. It can be hammered into sheets, drawn into wire, shaped into delicate forms. It is more workable than many harder materials, yet durable enough to survive. It takes polish beautifully. When you rub it with cloth, your fingertips feel the smooth resistance of metal becoming reflective. A face appears dimly on its surface, not as clearly as in a modern mirror, but enough to make a person pause. There you are, blurred and ghost-like, meeting yourself in a fragment of earth. That reflective quality may be one reason silver feels so personal. It does not simply shine outward. It returns something. It catches firelight, moonlight, skin, eyes. It lets the ancient world see itself, though imperfectly. You can almost understand why people began to think of metals as having temperaments. Silver is not loud. It is not the colour of blood, leaves, or sun. It is the colour of quiet water under night. As centuries pass, silver begins to settle into systems of power. Chiefs, priests, merchants, and palace officials all notice its usefulness. It can decorate bodies, sanctify rituals, measure wealth, and travel compactly. A sack of grain feeds you, yes, but it spoils, spills, and attracts mice with ambitions. Silver can wait. It can sit in a storeroom through seasons. It can be hidden under floors, sealed in jars, buried in fields, or worn openly as a declaration that you're not, socially speaking, to be ignored. You move through an early marketplace. It is morning now, pale and cool. Donkeys snort, baskets creak. Bread smells warm. Fish smells less poetic, but very present. Wool brushes your arm. Someone argues over a measure of barley. Someone else weighs metal. Silver does not yet rule everything, but it is learning the habits of authority. It brings distance into the market, because the person who accepts it believes another person, somewhere else, will also accept it. That belief is delicate. It is also revolutionary. Still, in these early days, silver remains partly magical because it is not fully understood. People know how to work it, test it, value it, and admire it, but they do not know the atomic structure, the geological timelines, or the future oceans it will cross. They do not know that this pale metal will one day help connect the Mediterranean, India, China, Africa, the Americas, and Europe in vast webs of desire and exchange. They only know the small immediate miracle dark stone goes into heat, bright metal comes out. Honestly, that is enough wonder for one lifetime. You pause beside a river under moonrise. The current speaks in soft syllables against stones. Your hand closes around a small silver bead on a cord. It rests against your palm, cool at first, then slowly warmed by your skin. This is how silver enters human history. Not as an abstract force, but as touch, as glimmer, as the quiet agreement between earth and imagination. It is beautiful because it shines, useful because it can be shaped, powerful because people decide it matters. And as night deepens, you feel the first great truth of silver settling around you. Treasure is never just a thing. It is a relationship between hands and metal, between the living and the dead, between distant communities that may never share a language, yet still recognize the same pale gleam. The world is still vast, slow, and mostly unknown, but already, in the hush of ancient fires and moonlit water, silver has begun teaching people how to connect. You stand in a city where money has begun to find a face. The morning air is bright with dust, donkey breath, wood smoke, and the sharp green smell of olives crushed somewhere nearby. Around you, a market wakes in layers. First comes the scrape of shutters, then the thud of baskets, then voices rising like birds from every stall. A fishmonger calls out with the confidence of a man who believes shouting improves freshness. A potter taps a jug to prove it is sound. A woman in a wool cloak weighs out grain while keeping one eye on a child who is trying, with heroic secrecy, to steal a fig. In your palm rests a small piece of silver, round enough to be trusted, flat enough to be stamped, and official enough to make strangers stop squinting at it suspiciously. It is not merely a lump of metal by weight, it is a coin. Someone powerful has pressed a symbol into it, a lion, an owl, a king, a goddess, a city badge, a promise. This is one of the great transformations in human history, quiet at first, then unstoppable. Silver becomes not only treasure but money with a public identity. A coin says, in effect, you do not have to know the person who pays you. You only have to know the mark. Very convenient. Really. Human trust has always appreciated a shortcut. One mainstream historical fact shines clearly here. Some of the earliest true coins appeared in Lydia, in western Anatolia, around the 7th century BCE. The earliest examples were often made of electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver. But silver coinage soon became central across the Greek world and the wider Mediterranean. You feel the importance of that shift as you turn the coin between finger and thumb. Its edge is uneven, its surface is not perfectly circular. Ancient coin makers were not aiming for the sterile perfection of a vending machine token. They wanted weight, metal, mark, authority, good enough to buy bread, pay soldiers, collect tribute, and make rulers feel wonderfully official. You step closer to a mint, the sound reaches you first. Hammer on die, metal on metal. A hard, ringing blow followed by another and another. The building smells of charcoal, sweat, hot iron, and the faint sourness of men working too close together before soap becomes everyone's favourite invention. Inside, small blanks of silver are heated, placed between engraved dies, and struck with practised force. One worker holds the lower die steady, another swings the hammer. There is danger in the rhythm, because fingers are soft and history is not known for workplace safety. A blank disc becomes a message in a single strike. On one side, perhaps Athena, calm and severe beneath her helmet. On the other, an owl with the round eyes, a little stiff, a little charming, looking as if it has just heard a secret and disapproves. These Athenian silver tetradrachms, often called owls, travel far beyond Athens. You might find them in Egypt, Persia, the Levant, or buried in hoards by people who never walked under the Acropolis. Their design becomes so recognizable that even distant imitations keep the owl, though sometimes the poor bird looks less like wisdom and more like it has seen a tax collector at breakfast. That is your quirky tidbit for the night. Ancient coin designs were copied so widely that some imitation owls look oddly lopsided, with strange eyes, stiff feathers, or lettering that seems to have had a difficult afternoon. Yet these copies still worked in many places because the idea mattered as much as the artistry. If the silver was acceptable and the symbol familiar, the market could forgive an owl with personality issues. You move through the crowd with a coin tucked into your belt. The touch of it is reassuring, cooler skeins cloth, heavier than its size suggests. With it, you can buy a small loaf, a cup of watered wine, a strip of salted fish, or a place to sleep on a straw mat that will definitely introduce you to every flea in the district. Coins do not make ancient life easy, but they make exchange faster. Instead of bargaining sheep for oil, or cloth for grain, people can measure value in small and portable pieces. Money compresses effort, a farmer's harvest, a soldier's risk, a potter's skill, a sailor's long voyage. All can be translated into silver. Naturally, people begin arguing about it almost immediately. Scholars still debate why coinage was invented in the first place. Was it mainly for trade, so merchants could exchange goods more easily? Was it for states to pay mercenaries and soldiers? Was it for temples, taxes, gifts, or public accounting? Or was coinage also a little theatre of power, a ruler stamping authority onto metal and sending that authority out into the hands of ordinary people? The evidence is rich, but not obedient. Coins appear in markets, sanctuaries, hoards, graves, and military contexts. They were practical. Yes, but humans rarely create practical things without decorating them with politics. You pass a money changer seated behind a low table. His scales are delicate, almost graceful. Little weights sit in a row, dark from handling. He takes your coin, rubs it, listens as it rings against another, and studies the surface with narrowed eyes. The ring matters. Pure silver has a certain voice. Debased coinage, mixed with too much base metal, may sound duller, feel different, or show suspicious colouring beneath scratches. Trust, once again, has become something you can hear. Around the Mediterranean, silver coinage spreads through city-states, kingdoms, and empires. The Persians use silver sigloi. Greek polis mint their proud local types. Hellenistic kings place their own portraits on coins, turning money into miniature propaganda. Later, Rome builds a mighty financial language around silver, especially with the denarius, introduced during the Roman Republic. You hold a Roman silver coin and feel how different it is from a local market token. It carries the ambition of roads, armies, law courts, tax registers, and imperial appetite. It is a small disc with a very large ego. Coins make rulers visible in places they will never personally visit. A king does not need to stand in every marketplace if his profile can do the rounds for him. You might be a shepherd in a dry province, a sailor unloading amphorae, a tavern keeper counting payments by lamplight, and still you meet the ruler's face in your palm. Some portraits are idealized, calm, divine, and suspiciously well-chinned. Others are more realistic, showing heavy brows, lined cheeks, or expressions that suggest ruling an empire has not improved anyone's sleep. The atmosphere of empire gathers in the coin. You feel it in the clink of payments to soldiers at the edge of a camp. Leather creaks, horses stamp. Smoke from cooking fires mingles with the smell of damp wool and oiled metal. A paymaster counts silver pieces into waiting hands. Each coin is more than wages. It is loyalty purchased one disc at a time. Armies march on food, but they also march on payment. When payment fails, discipline grows thin. A hungry soldier with unpaid wages is not exactly a lullaby for civic stability. Silver also enters taxation. A farmer who grows barley may owe obligations that are now measured in money. A province may send tribute in coin or bullion. A city may mint silver to fund walls, fleets, festivals, or wars. The metal makes administration easier, but not gentler. Imagine standing in a line outside a tax office, just smelling dust, sweat, old wood, and anxiety. Your hand tightens around the coins you must surrender. The official does not hate you personally. That is comforting, perhaps. He has simply converted your labour into numbers, and numbers can be extremely rude. Yet coins also open possibilities. They allow sailors, craftsmen, widows, soldiers, migrants, and merchants to carry value across distance. A person can leave home with wealth hidden in a pouch, sewn into a garment, or buried under a floor for later retrieval. Hoards of silver coins, found centuries later, often tell stories of fear. Someone gathered wealth, concealed it, and never returned. War, plague, exile, sudden death, or plain bad luck closed the little circle of intention. When you imagine a hand placing coins into a jar beneath packed earth, the sound is soft, one small clink after another, almost tender. In a Greek harbour, you feel silver's reach widen, ships rock against ropes, tar and salt thicken the air. Sailors shout in different languages. Amphorae of wine, sacks of grain, dyed cloth, timber, spices, and metal goods pass from dock to warehouse. Silver coins cross between hands as a shared grammar. They do not erase mistrust. Nothing that convenient has ever existed, but they reduce it. A trader may not know your city, your family, or your private opinions about the price of figs, but he may recognize the coin. Counterfeiting follows coinage like a shadow. Where there is official trust, someone soon develops unofficial creativity. Some counterfeiters plate base metal with silver, others shave tiny amounts from coin edges, collecting slivers over time. This is why some coins are later made with ridged or carefully marked edges, because apparently people cannot be left alone with nice things. Ancient authorities punish counterfeiters harshly, not just because theft is involved, but because false money attacks the shared belief that makes coinage function. You sit at the edge of the market as evening lowers itself over the roofs. Lamps bloom one by one. The day's heat lifts from stone. Somewhere, a flute plays a wandering tune, half cheerful, half tired. A merchant counts his coins under his breath. A mother buys oil. A soldier drinks too much cheap wine. A priest receives an offering that flashes pale in firelight. Silver has moved through all of them, adapting to each hand without belonging fully to anyone. The coin in your palm is small enough to lose in straw, yet it contains a city, a mine, a ruler, a labourer, a ship route, a tax demand, a promise, and a risk. It makes value portable. It makes authority touchable. It teaches distant strangers to accept the same sign, and as you close your fingers around its cool roundness, you understand why silver coinage did not merely help people buy things. It helped shape the mental map of the ancient world, one quiet clink at a time. You walk out from the crowded city and into distance. The road begins as packed earth, pale in the early sun, with wagon ruts hardened by old rain. Dust lifts around your ankles. It settles on your lips with a dry, chalky taste. Somewhere ahead, bells tied to pack animals give a sleepy clatter. Not quite music, not quite warning. The air smells of camel hair, leather straps, stale grain, and the faint sweetness of dates tucked in woven baskets. A caravan is forming, and silver is hidden among its burdens, wrapped in cloth, sealed in boxes, sewn into belts, counted in the heads of men who trust memory only slightly less than metal. Here, silver becomes motion, not the grand motion of armies or kings standing on balconies trying to look eternal, which must be exhausting, but the steadier movement of merchants, porters, sailors, translators, guards, pilgrims, and muleteers. They carry value across land and sea, through heat, storms, taxes, suspicious officials, and inns where the bedding has a lively private ecosystem. They carry silver because silver can travel better than wheat, oil, timber, or livestock. A goat is useful, certainly, but it is not subtle in a money pouch. You join the caravan as it leaves the settlement. The ground is still cool beneath your sandals. A lead rope brushes your wrist, rough with dust. Camels groan in deep, offended voices, as though every journey has been personally arranged to inconvenience them. Their padded feet press into the road with soft thumps. Donkeys flick their ears. Men and women adjust loads, tighten knots, spit into the dirt, and glance toward the horizon where the road thins into brightness. Silver lies somewhere inside this movement, sometimes as coin, sometimes as ingot, sometimes as clipped fragments weighed by scale. It is not always visible. That is part of its power. Goods surround it, bolts of cloth, jars of oil, incense, glass, wine, wool, spices, ivory, amber, pearls, and dyes so costly that a small stain might make a merchant quietly reconsider his entire life. Silver helps measure these things, helps purchase them, helps settle accounts between people who may share only a few words and a great deal of caution. One mainstream historical fact anchors this road long-distance trade across Eurasia, North Africa, and the Indian Ocean connected regions centuries before the modern idea of globalization. The Silk Roads were never a single road, despite the neat name that makes it sound like someone built a scenic highway for silk and polite camels. They were networks of routes linking China, Central Asia, India, Persia, the Mediterranean, and many regions in between. Silver moved through these networks alongside textiles, horses, gems, spices, ideas, religions, diseases, and stories improve dramatically with each retelling. As you travel, the landscape changes with patient slowness. Fields loosen into scrub. Scrub fades into stony plain. The road climbs, dips, and disappears under wind-blown sand, then reappears where other feet have insisted it must. At night, the caravan stops near a well. The sky turns dark blue, then black, and the stars come out in cold multitudes. You hear animals chewing. You hear someone grinding grain by hand, stone against stone in a circular rasp. A small fire burns with a smell of dung fuel and smoke. The warmth touches your face while your back feels the chill open behind you. A trader sits beside you with a set of scales. They are small enough to fit in a pouch, delicate enough to feel almost ceremonial. He places bits of silver on one side and tiny weights on the other. His fingertips are stained with road dust. He does not need a royal portrait stamped on every piece. He needs weight, purity, habit, and reputation. In many trading worlds, silver by weight remains as important as coin. It can be cut, tested, melted, remade, and accepted in forms that would make a tidy mint official sigh deeply into his paperwork. Researchers continue to dispute how closely ancient and medieval trade was controlled by states compared with private merchants, kinship networks, religious communities, and local brokers. Some evidence points to powerful governments regulating routes, taxes, weights, and diplomatic exchanges. Other evidence reveals flexible, informal systems held together by families, partnerships, credit, and trust built over repeated journeys. The truth probably refuses to be simple, as history often does when scholars bring nice clean categories to a dusty caravanserai. You enter one of those caravanserais as evening spreads across the road. Its walls rise from the plain like a square promise. Inside, there is water, shelter, fodder, gossip, and the comforting possibility that no one will steal your pack animal before dawn. The courtyard smells of hay, sweat, spices, smoke, and damp stone around the cistern. Hooves strike the paving. A cook stirs lentils in a blackened pot. Travellers from different regions sit in small circles, each group wrapped in its own language, yet alert to the shared vocabulary of trade weight, measure, gesture, nod, frown, bargain. Silver passes quietly between them. A Sogdian merchant may arrange credit for silk. A Persian trader may deal in glass and metalwork. An Arab sailor may speak of ports where pepper comes in sacks and pearls are sorted by lamplight. A Jewish merchant, a Christian monk, a Buddhist pilgrim, a Hindu broker, and a Turkic horse dealer might all move within overlapping circuits of exchange. Not in perfect harmony, of course. Humans can connect continents and still argue fiercely over a blanket, but the road makes contact unavoidable. You run your fingers over a strip of cloth from far away. It is smooth, tightly woven, cooler than local wool. The merchant who offers it wants silver because silver can be recognized elsewhere. It has a kind of travelling personality. It can enter one city as payment for horses, leave another as temple donation, be melted into ornament, then later return to commerce as bullion. Silver is patient with identity. It does not mind becoming something else. Now the road gives way to water. You stand in a port at dawn. The air is thick with salt, fish scales, tar, wet rope, and citrus peel crushed underfoot. Gulls cry overhead with all the delicacy of unpaid debt collectors. Ships lean against the harbour, their hulls dark with pitch, their ropes creaking as waves lift and lower them. Dockworkers shout, amphorae knock together. A sailor curses a knot. A scribe sits beneath an awning, recording cargo with the grave expression of a man who believes civilization depends on tidy lists, and honestly, he is not entirely wrong. Silver moves differently at sea, on land. Every mile is muscle and hoof. At sea, a ship can carry heavy goods across astonishing distances, provided wind, currents, hull, crew, and luck agree to cooperate. The Indian Ocean trade world is especially important. Seasonal monsoon winds allow sailors to travel between the Red Sea, East Africa, Arabia, India, and Southeast Asia, with a rhythm that feels almost like breathing. One season carries ships outward, another helps bring them back. Merchants plan around the sky and wind, not around a clock on a wall. In the Roman period, writers complained that huge amounts of wealth flowed eastward to buy luxuries from India, Arabia, and beyond. The complaint is wonderfully human. People enjoy spices, silk, gemstones, and fine cotton. Then someone in a moralizing mood notices the bill. Silver becomes part of this movement, drawn toward regions producing desired goods. In return come pepper, aromatics, textiles, pearls, ivory, and medicines. The taste of pepper on the tongue, sharp and warm, is tied to the cold touch of silver in a merchant's hand. A quirky tidbit waits in the north, far from these hot ports. In the Viking Age, silver often travelled as hack silver-chopped pieces of jewellery, bars, coins, and ornaments weighed out for payment. A beautiful bracelet might be cut into bits as casually as slicing cheese, which feels rude to the bracelet but practical for trade. Hoards found around the Baltic and beyond contain Islamic silver dirhams, ornaments, ingots, and fragments, showing how far silver could travel through trade, raiding, tribute, and exchange. Some coins ended up so far from their mints that they seem almost adventurous. The coins rarely get credit for bravery. You imagine one such coin crossing hands minted in a distant Islamic city, carried through river routes, weighed in a northern market, nicked by a knife to test its metal, then buried for safekeeping in cold soil. Around it lie bits of arm rings and foreign coins, all reduced to silver weight. The hoard is not a museum display to its owner. It is savings, security, possibility. It may be bride wealth, trading capital, emergency reserve, or the quiet pleasure of knowing you have something hidden where only you can find it. Unless, sadly, you forget the exact tree. History has preserved many treasures because someone had a very bad day. On the trade roads, silver also carries ideas indirectly. It pays for manuscripts, temple lamps, mosque endowments, monastery supplies, ship repairs, caravan guards, and translators. It supports the movement of pilgrims and scholars. It settles debts after a shipment of cloth crosses a desert or a cargo of pepper survives the sea. Money is not culture by itself, but it greases the hinges of contact. It helps doors open. You continue along the edge of the harbour as night falls. Lamps tremble in the wind. The water reflects them in broken gold and silver lines. A merchant counts payments in a room above a warehouse. Below, sailors sleep among coils of rope. Somewhere in the dark, a rat investigates a sack with professional interest. The world is not yet unified, not exactly. It is stitched, unevenly, beautifully, sometimes violently, sometimes tenderly, with threads of road, sail, rumour, credit, appetite, and metal. Silver is one of those threads. It links a miner's labour to a queen's ornament, a desert well to a coastal warehouse, a northern hoard to a southern mint, a spice seller's smile to a tax collector's ink. It does not remove distance. It gives distance a price. It does not make strangers trust each other completely. It gives them something cool and immeasurable to place between their doubts. You lie down in the caravanserai courtyard beneath the open sky. The stone under your blanket holds the day's last warmth. Animals shift and breathe nearby. Someone whispers a prayer, somewhere, wrapped in cloth and tucked close to a traveller's ribs. Silver waits for morning. It will move again with the bells, the dust, the wind, and the slow, human longing to trade what is near for what is far. You descend where daylight becomes a rumour. The path into the mountain is narrow, damp, and cold enough to make your breath feel borrowed from winter. Above ground, the hillside may be bright with scrub grass, pine resin, goats, and distant bells. But down here the world closes around you. Stone presses near your shoulders. Water drips somewhere ahead with slow, patient taps. The air smells of wet rock, smoke, sweat, lamp oil, and the sour metallic scent that clings to war. You place one hand against the wall and feel rough stone bite lightly into your palm. It is not beautiful yet. That is the trick silver plays. It begins in darkness, mixed with dull minerals, hidden inside rock that looks almost insultingly ordinary. A miner walks ahead with a small lamp. Its flame trembles each time the tunnel breathes. Shadows climb the walls and fold back on themselves. The sound of tools comes in the waves pick against stone, hammer on wedge, basket scraping the floor, a cough, a muttered prayer, the low grunt of someone lifting too much weight, because ancient and early modern labour rarely cared about your lower back. The mountain answers every blow with a dull echo. It feels awake, though not necessarily pleased. Silver mining is not one story. It is many stories stacked like layers of rock Greek mines at Lorient, Roman workings in Spain, medieval shafts in Central Europe, Islamic and Indian mining traditions, Andean mountains, Mexican veins, Japanese deposits, and countless smaller places where families, prisoners, enslaved workers, wage labourers, specialists, and desperate hopefuls entered the earth. The metal travels through palaces and markets, but first it must survive this place, where human ambition meets geology and very poor lighting. One mainstream historical fact stands firmly in the tunnel with you. The Lorient mines near Athens supplied much of the silver that helped finance the Athenian navy in the early 5th century BCE. That fleet became crucial during the Greco-Persian Wars, especially at the Battle of Salamis in 480 BCE. It is strange to think of ships and sea battles while standing in a cramped mine. But history loves hidden connections. A dark vein underground can become oars striking water, bronze rams cutting waves, and a city imagining itself powerful. All that bright public drama begins here, with dust in the throat and stone under the fingernails. You crouch beside a vein of ore. It does not look like moonlight. It may appear grey, black, glittering, heavy, or mixed with lead-rich galena. A trained eye sees promise where an untrained traveller sees a rock with social confidence. The miner taps it, listens, studies its grain, then signals for more work. Tools are simple, but skill is not. Knowing where to dig, how to support a roof, when to abandon a passage, how to drain water, and how to sort ore from waste all require experience. The mountain punishes careless guesses. The touch of mining is everywhere. Rope burns the hands, wooden supports are damp and splintery, baskets dig into shoulders, dust settles into hair and eyebrows. In some mines, children or very small workers are sent through tight spaces because the mountain, being rude, does not always make corridors at adult height. Lamps smoke, air grows thin. A person learns to read danger through small signs, a shift in sound, a crack in timber, a sudden smell, a wall sweating more than usual. The darkness has a language, and miners must learn it quickly. You follow a line of workers carrying ore upward. Their steps are slow, measured, tired, outside. The daylight hurts your eyes. The world opens with almost shocking abundance wind. Sky, bird calls, the resin scent of cut wood, the warmth of sun on your face, or is dumped, sorted, crushed, washed, roasted, and smelted. The mountain does not give silver politely. It demands a whole industry around it. Crushing begins with rhythm. Stone hammers rise and fall. Later, in some regions, water-powered stamp mills do the work, pounding ore with relentless mechanical patience. The sound is heavy and repetitive, like thunder that has found employment. Dust hangs in the air. It tastes bitter. Workers wet the ore, sift it, wash it, and separate heavier materials. Nearby, furnaces glow. Charcoal smoke curls upward. Bellows push air into heat. The smell changes from damp earth to hot mineral, burned wood, and something sharp that makes the back of your nose tighten. Smelting silver-bearing ore often involves lead, fire, and careful separation. Intercalation, lead oxidizes and carries away impurities, leaving precious silver behind. It is an elegant idea wrapped in dangerous labour. The furnace workers stand close to heat that reddens their faces and dries their skin. Their tools glow at the tips. Liquid metal shines with a terrifying beauty, too hot to touch, too valuable to ignore. The first glimpse of refined silver must feel like a reward from an unfriendly god, a pale bead, a sheet, a lump, a brightness freed from black stone. A quirky tidbit hides in the miner's world, and it belongs to folklore as much as geology. In German-speaking mining regions, workers told us stories of underground spirits, including kobolds, who could mislead miners, spoil ore, or guard hidden riches. The word later became linked to cobalt because certain ores frustrated smelters and released unpleasant fumes. Imagine blaming a mischievous underground creature because your ore behaves badly. Honestly, it is more emotionally satisfying than blaming chemistry. Mining communities are built around uncertainty. A rich vein may make a town bloom almost overnight. A vein may also vanish, split, deepen, flood, or disappoint everyone involved. You walk through a mining settlement at dusk. Houses lean along muddy lanes. The air smells of smoke, animal, yeast, damp wool, and slag heaps cooling outside town. A tavern glows with lamplight. Inside, miners drink, laugh too loudly, compare rumours, and exaggerate the richness of veins they may or may not have seen. Hope is a kind of currency here, though unfortunately not one accepted by bakers for very long. There is always an owner or several, a king, a city, a noble, a monastery, a merchant syndicate, a colonial official, a company, a local lord, or a tax farmer may claim the metal before it even leaves the ground. Mining requires capital timber, tools, food, drainage systems, furnaces, transport animals, skilled labour, guards, and accountants. Accountants are less romantic than miners. Yes, but empires always loved a ledger. Silver invites administration because silver invites taxation. Special laws grow around mines. In medieval Europe, mining districts may receive privileges to attract skilled workers. In some places, miners win rights of movement, self-governance, or shares in production. In other places, labour is coerced with brutal indifference. The same metal that becomes a wedding cup in one hand may be born from exhaustion in another. That contrast never leaves silver. It shines beautifully, but not innocently. Specialists appear everywhere. Assayers test purity, smelters read furnace colour, surveyors map veins, carpenters build supports, charcoal burners feed the fire, Mule drivers move ore, coin officials wait for refined metal, merchants advance credit, priests bless dangerous work, healers tend crushed fingers, bad lungs, and fevers. Food sellers follow wages, gambling follows wages too. Because apparently a person can crawl out of a mine and decide what life really needs is more risk. Different regions develop different technologies. Where water floods shafts, drainage becomes essential. Workers dig adits, which are horizontal passages that let water flow out. They use pumps, wheels, chains of buckets, and later more elaborate machines. In Central European mining districts such as Saxony and Bohemia, technical knowledge becomes highly sophisticated by the late medieval and early modern periods. Manuals describe tools, furnaces, surveying methods, and underground organization. The mine becomes not just a hole, but a system. Historians still argue whether technological innovation in mining was driven more by scarcity, state demand, private profit, skilled worker mobility, or environmental pressure. Some see the hunger for coin and taxes pushing engineers to solve deeper and wetter problems. Others emphasize local craft traditions, practical experiments, and the movement of miners between districts. The evidence is scattered in contracts, tools, slag, shafts, illustrations, and the stubborn remains of landscapes altered by labour. The mountain keeps some secrets, which is very on brand for a mountain. You step into another shaft deeper than the first. This one has timbering along the walls. The wood smells damp and fungal. Your fingertips brush a beam polished by many passing shoulders. Somewhere far below, a hammer rings with lonely clarity. The sound travels strangely, as if the mountain has swallowed a bell. You feel the weight above you. Not metaphorical weight, though there is plenty of that, but actual stone, tons of it, resting over a narrow human passage. It brings humility. Also a strong preference for outdoor hobbies. Yet miners return day after day because the reward can be immense. A good strike can pay debts, fund armies, build churches, decorate courts, and draw entire populations toward remote places. Mining towns become crossroads of the languages and skills. They are rough, smoky, anxious, inventive. The rhythm of life follows shifts, or grades, water levels, market prices, and rumours. Children grew up hearing not only lullabies, but the steady beat of stamps crushing stone. Silver shapes the soundscape of their childhood. The environment changes too. Forests are cut for timber and charcoal, streams are diverted, hillsides are scarred, slag piles rise like dark artificial hills, smoke stains the air. In places where mercury is used in later refining processes, danger spreads beyond the mine into bodies, water, and soil. People may not understand every poison, but they know when animals sicken, when workers tremble, when fumes make the head ache. The treasure has a cost that cannot always be counted in coins. Night settles over the mining camp. The furnaces glow red against the dark, and sparks climb and vanish. The cold air carries a mix of pine smoke, hot slag, wet wool, and cooking stew. A worker sits outside a hut, rubbing his hands, the skin cracked and blackened around the nails. Nearby, a small piece of refined silver catches lamplight. After all the digging, crushing, washing, roasting, smelting, weighing, and claiming, it looks almost calm. Too calm, really, for something that caused so much trouble. You hold it for a moment. It has cooled now. It rests in your palm with that familiar clean weight, smooth along one edge, irregular on another. Around it you sense the whole hidden world, the echoing shaft, the groaning cart, the smoke-bitten furnace, the anxious investor, the praying family, the skilled assayer, the tired mule, the forest cut for charcoal, the ruler waiting for revenue. Silver is not simply found. It is forced into history through labour, danger, technology, and desire. The mountain stands silent above the camp, black against a field of stars. Beneath it, tunnels spread like roots. Within them, people have followed narrow veins through darkness because somewhere inside the stone, pale brightness waits. And as you turn away from the furnace glow, you understand that every silver coin, cup, mirror, and ornament carries a trace of this underground world, where the treasure that connected people first asked them to descend. You enter a world where silver no longer simply travels, it is demanded. The street beneath your feet is narrow, damp, and alive with morning work. Roof tiles drip after a night of rain. Water slides from bamboo gutters into stone channels with a soft tapping sound. A rooster complains from a courtyard as though personally offended by dawn. The air smells of rice steam, wet wood, ink, bean paste, horse sweat, and the faint mineral scent of coins handled by too many fingers. Around you, Ming China breathes through markets, tax offices, workshops, river ports, and counting rooms, and everywhere, quietly, silver waits to be weighed. You stand beneath a wooden awning while merchants open their shutters. A silk seller smooths folded cloth with careful palms. A tea vendor lifts the lid from a steaming pot, and warm fragrance curls into the lane. A porter bends under baskets tied to a shoulder pole. The pole flexes against his skin, polished by years of labour. Nearby, a clerk sits at a table with brushes, paper, and scales, his sleeves tucked back so they will not drag through ink. He does not look like a conqueror. He looks like a man preparing to make everyone's day more complicated. One mainstream historical fact holds the street together during the Ming dynasty, especially from the 16th century onward. Silver became central to China's tax system and commercial life. The single whip reforms gradually converted many labour services and taxes into payments measured in silver. Instead of owing grain here, cloth there, corvée labour somewhere else, households increasingly faced obligations expressed in one metal. Tidy for officials, perhaps, terrifying for peasants who grew millet, raised pigs, or harvested rice, but did not necessarily have silver lying around in a cheerful little box. You feel the change at ground level. A farmer arrives from a village with a bundle of produce, hoping to sell enough to obtain silver for taxes. His straw sandals are damp, mud dries round his ankles. He smells of field water, smoke, and cut stalks. In his hand he carries not confidence, but calculation. Grain must become copper cash or goods, then perhaps silver, then a receipt, then relief, at least until the next demand arrives. Silver has become the language the state prefers, and people must learn to speak it whether they enjoy the lesson or not. The clerk weighs a small piece of silver on a balance. It is not a neat coin stamped with a proud face. Much silver in China circulates as bullion, ingots, fragments, and lumps known by weight and purity. A merchant may use a tael as a unit of weight, though actual measures vary by region and context, because history enjoys making accountants earn their porridge. The metal is clipped, melted, cast, tested, and weighed again. Value is not always printed on the surface. It is negotiated through scale, assay, reputation, and experience. You watch the balance tremble. The little pan dips, rises, settles. The sound is almost nothing, just a faint tick of metal against metal. Yet everyone nearby grows quiet. Silver has a special silence around it. People lean in. They watch the hand, the weight, the clerk's expression. A small error can mean hardship. A dishonest scale can become a village rumour by sunset. A quirky tidbit glimmers in the shapes themselves. Chinese silver ingots, often called sicey in English, could be cast into forms that look like small boats, shoes, saddles, or folded clouds. Some were elegant, some lumpy, some stamped with marks from assayers or firms. Later, the boat-shaped yuan bao became a symbol of prosperity so cheerful that it appears in decorations and New Year imagery. Imagine a heavy little silver boat carrying fortune across your table. Very charming, unless you owe taxes, in which case the boat seems to be sailing away from you. China's appetite for silver draws metal from many directions. Japanese mines supply large amounts in the 16th century. Spanish-American silver crosses oceans through Manila, where merchants exchange it for Chinese silk, porcelain, and other goods. European traders arrive with silver because Chinese products are desired abroad, while Chinese markets often have less interest in many European goods. This creates a powerful pattern. Silver flows toward China, and luxuries flow outward. The world begins to bend around demand from Chinese consumers, officials, and merchants. You stand in a river port where this demand becomes visible. Boats crowd the water, their hulls bumping softly in the current. Sailors shout over the creak of ropes and the slap of waves against wood. The smell is thick fish, tar, damp hemp, coal smoke, garlic frying in oil, and the sweet dust of porcelain packing straw. Crates are stacked under canvas. Bales of silk are guarded like sleeping royalty. Porcelain bowls, pale and ringing when tapped, are packed for long journeys. Silver enters through the hands of brokers and leaves transformed into goods that will grace tables far away. In a counting house, the atmosphere is hushed but tense. Light falls through paper windows, an abacus clicks beneath quick fingers, brush tips scratch across ledgers. The room smells of ink, sandalwood, dry paper, and human worry. A merchant receives foreign silver, perhaps in the form of Spanish dollars, later famous in Asian trade. These coins may be chopped with small marks by money handlers who test and guarantee them. Each little stamp is like a review from a very serious customer, acceptable, tested, trusted enough. A coin can become crowded with marks, a metal passport covered in approvals. Historians still argue whether China's silver-centered economy made the late Ming state stronger by simplifying revenue, or weaker by exposing ordinary people and government finances to silver shortages, price swings, and global trade shocks. Some scholars emphasize administrative efficiency and market expansion. Others point to rural distress, tax pressure, and the danger of tying obligations to a metal many households could only obtain through sale and exchange. The debate remains alive because the evidence is uneven, regional, and stubbornly human. You leave the port and walk into the countryside. Rice fields shimmer under grey light. Frogs call from ditches. Water buffalo move slowly through mud with magnificent indifference. The air smells of wet earth, green shoots, manure, and cooking smoke drifting from village homes. Here, silver feels distant until tax season makes it painfully close. A family may have grain in storage and vegetables in the garden, but still need silver to satisfy an obligation. That need pulls village life into wider markets. The farmer must sell, the buyer must pay, the tax must be converted. Suddenly, a household near a muddy field is connected to mines in Japan, mountains in the Americas, warehouses in Manila, ships at sea, and officials who would probably prefer not to think about frogs. The pressure changes social rhythms. Cash crops may become more attractive where they help earn silver. Textile production grows in some regions, with households spinning and weaving for market sale. Women's labour becomes essential in many domestic industries, though records often hide their names behind household heads and tax categories. You step inside a weaving room. The floor is smooth from use. The loom creaks gently. Threads pass through fingers with a soft rasp. A woman leans into her work, listening to rain tick against the roof. Her cloth may eventually become silver, and that silver may become tax, rent, dowry, debt payment, or savings. The global economy is not only ships and officials. It is also tired hands guiding thread by lamplight. Urban life grows more refined and more restless. In prosperous cities, silver supports consumption books, opera, gardens, fine robes, carved furniture, tea culture, painted fans, and porcelain so delicate you feel nervous just standing near it. You pass a shop where scholars inspect brushes and inkstones. The scent of pine soot ink is deep and earthy. A gentleman in a soft robe argues over the quality of paper with the seriousness usually reserved for military defeat. Nearby, a storyteller performs while listeners sip tea. Coins clink. Silver is not always visible, but its presence fills the shelves. Yet hunger for silver can darken quickly. When silver becomes scarce or more expensive relative to copper, cash and grain, tax burdens may bite harder in times of bad harvest, warfare, corruption, or disrupted trade. The system strains. You hear it in the market when voices sharpen. A seller refuses copper at yesterday's rate. A buyer complains that silver is too dear. A tax runner demands payment. A debtor lowers his eyes. The smell of fried dough and sesame oil cannot soften every worry. The late Ming world faces many pressures: fiscal trouble, factional politics, military threats, climate stress during the Little Ice Age, peasant unrest, and changes in silver supply. Silver is not the only cause of crisis. History is rarely that polite, but it becomes one of the nerves through which crisis is felt. When money tightens, obligations do not vanish. They become heavier. You pause beside a small household altar at dusk. Incense burns in a blue thread. The room smells of smoke, tea leaves, and old wood. A family has placed offerings with quiet care. Outside, a dog barks. Somewhere nearby, someone counts money behind a closed door. In the dim light, a small silver ingot rests wrapped in cloth, hidden from thieves, neighbours, and perhaps even unlucky spirits. It represents tax survival, marriage plans, business hope, family security, and the fragile belief that tomorrow can be managed. Silver in China becomes more than metal. It's a bridge between state and village, port and field, loom and ledger, foreign mine and local market. It makes distant lands matter to people who will never see the ocean. It turns household labour into revenue and luxury demand into global movement. It gives officials a cleaner accounting system, merchants a powerful medium, and ordinary families a cold weight of anxiety in the palm. Night settles over the lane. Rain begins again, gentle on tiles, soft in gutters. A clerk closes his ledger. A merchant locks his chest. A farmer sleeps lightly, thinking of fields, prices, and payment. Somewhere in the darkness, silver lies wrapped in paper, shaped like a tiny boat, waiting to carry obligation, desire, and history across another day. You climb into thin air, where breath becomes a small negotiation. The path rises through the Andes in pale morning light, stony, cold, and restless under your feet. Each step seems to ask for more strength than it politely deserves. The wind moves across the slope with a dry whisper, carrying the smell of dust, llama wool, dung smoke, and distant cooking fires. Your fingertips are numb inside your sleeves. Your lips taste of salt and altitude. Above you stands a mountain with a reddish face, broad and severe, catching the sun like a sleeping giant that has heard too many prayers. This is Cerro Rico, the rich mountain, at Potosi. You stand in what is now Bolivia, in a place so high that clouds seem less like weather and more like neighbours. The city below sits at over 4,000 metres above sea level, where nights bite hard and mornings arrive bright but not always warm. The air is thin enough to make ambition feel physically unreasonable. Naturally, humans looked at this mountain and decided to build one of the most intense mining cities the world had ever known. Very calm decision-making, as usual. One mainstream historical fact is impossible to miss after rich silver deposits were identified at Potosi. In 1545, the city became one of the greatest silver-producing centres of the Spanish Empire. Its output helped fuel global trade, imperial finance, and the flow of silver across oceans. By the 17th century, Potosi was famous across continents, spoken of as a place where wealth poured from stone, though the people doing the pouring rarely became wealthy themselves. You enter the city through streets alive with cold dust. Hooves strike rock, mules snort clouds into the air, llamas move with soft, padded steps, their loads balanced in bundles along narrow lanes. Vendors call out in Spanish, Quechua, Aymara, and other voices shaped by trade, labour, and survival. The smell is thick and layered: roasting maize, tallow candles, wet wool, urine in alleys, iron tools, charcoal smoke, and the sharp mineral tang from ore yards. Bells ring from churches, hammers sound from workshops. Somewhere, coins clatter across a table, bright little witnesses pretending not to know where they came from. The mountain dominates everything. It rises over Potosi not merely as scenery, but as employer, threat, treasury, prison, miracle, and wound. You feel its presence even indoors, as though stone can stare through walls. People orient their lives around it, officials count it, merchants finance it, indigenous communities fear and negotiate with it. Enslaved Africans are brought into the broader system of labour and production. Priests bless processions under its shadow. Mine owners dream of veins widening in the dark. Workers look up at it and see the mouth of another day. You follow a group toward the mine entrances. The ground grows rougher, the air cools, men carry candles, coca leaves, tools, and sacks. Some chew coca to steady themselves against hunger, fatigue, and altitude. The leaves make the mouth slightly numb. The smell is green, dry, and bitter. A worker presses a wad into his cheek, his face calm in the way people become calm when there's no useful alternative. Inside the mine, the world narrows quickly, the ceiling lowers. Your shoulder brushes stone slick with moisture. The candle flame wavers and gutters. Smoke collects where air refuses to move. You hear the scrape of sandals, the dull thud of picks, the rattle of loose rock, a cough swallowed by darkness. The floor is uneven, gritty beneath your soles, sometimes muddy, sometimes sharp. You place a hand on the wall and feel cold mineral dampness seep into your skin. Silver at Potosi is not a gentle treasure resting in a decorative chest. Despite what paintings and imperial fantasies might suggest, it must be broken out of rock, carried through tunnels, sorted, crushed, mixed, washed, heated, and accounted for. The mountain produces wealth because bodies move through it. Every bar of silver contains footsteps, breath, cold fingers, bent backs, and the soft hiss of candles burning underground. Spanish colonial authorities relied heavily on forced labour systems, especially the mita, adapted from earlier Andean forms of rotational labour, but transformed under colonial rule into a much harsher engine for mining. Indigenous communities across wide regions were required to send workers to Potosi. Many came from far away, leaving fields, families, and local obligations behind. The journey itself could be exhausting. The work could be dangerous. The separation could strain entire communities. You stand near a lodging area where workers prepare for another shift. Wool blankets are rough to the touch. A clay stove gives off smoke that stings the eyes. Soup simmers thinly in a pot, smelling of potatoes, herbs, and ash. Someone tightens a belt. Someone checks a candle. Someone murmurs a prayer, not loudly, because hope has learned to conserve energy here. Outside, the wind presses against the walls. Inside, bodies lean close for warmth. Researchers still debate the full demographic toll of Potosi and how best to separate deaths caused by mine labour from those caused by disease, displacement, hunger, altitude, mercury exposure, and broader colonial disruption. Popular accounts have sometimes offered enormous numbers. While scholars warn that records are incomplete and categories are difficult to compare, the uncertainty does not soften the suffering. It simply reminds you that the past can be devastating even when it refuses to fit neatly into a single figure. The processing yards bring another kind of danger. You walk into a patio where ore is crushed and prepared. Dust rises in pale clouds. It coats eyelashes, sleeves, and the inside of the throat. The sound is relentless grinding mills, animal hooves circling, shouted orders, wooden beams creaking, water splashing through channels. Potosi's silver boom depended heavily on mercury amalgamation, especially after the patio process spread in Spanish America. Mercury allowed silver to be extracted from lower-grade ores more efficiently, which was brilliant for output and deeply unfriendly to human bodies and landscapes. You watch workers mix crushed ore with salt, mercury, water, and other ingredients across broad stone floors. Mules turn mills in slow circles, their bells clinking dully. Bare hands and feet may come into contact with substances no one should be touching. Though people understand enough to know the work can make them ill, the mercury has a strange heaviness, a liquid shine that breaks into beads. It looks almost alive, which is rude of something so toxic. Silver clings to it through chemical attraction, forming an amalgam. Then heat separates the silver, sending invisible danger into the air. The atmosphere tastes metallic. Fires burn low and hot. Men turn away from fumes when they can. The cold mountain wind sometimes helps, sometimes only spreads the bite elsewhere. Water channels carry waste. Slag and tailings gather in heaps. The city's wealth is not just extracted from the earth. It is washed through the whole environment. And yet Potosi dazzles. You enter the city centre at dusk, when candles and lamps begin to glow behind carved balconies. The streets are crowded with muleteers, merchants, officials, friars, artisans, gamblers, cooks, servants, and travellers. Silver has drawn them like a magnet. There are churches with ornate interiors, official buildings, warehouses, gaming houses, markets, and workshops. Luxury goods arrive from across the empire and beyond. European cloth, Asian silk, African labour, Andean foods, wine, tools, paper, pigments, and devotional objects. A mining city at the top of the world somehow becomes plugged into nearly everything. The royal mint of Potosi turns bullion into coin, giving imperial form to mountain wealth. You hear the heavy rhythm of striking and stamping. Metal is weighed, melted, cast, rolled, cut, and marked. The smell of charcoal and hot metal clings to the air. Coins minted here, especially the famous pieces of 8, travel far beyond the Andes. They pass through ports, treasuries, markets, and counting houses across the world. A disc shaped in this cold city might later buy silk in Asia, pay soldiers in Europe, or settle debts in a Caribbean harbour. The mountain's breath becomes global currency. Here is a quirky tidbit with a long echo. The expression Vale un Potosi, meaning worth a Potosi, became a way in Spanish to describe something of enormous value. Miguel de Cervantes used the phrase in Don Quixote. Imagine becoming so famous for wealth that your city name turns into a proverb. Not bad branding. Though the mountain might have preferred a less exhausting public image, you turn into a quieter street. The night is clear. Stars glitter fiercely above the roofs, sharper than jewels and much colder. Music drifts from a doorway. A guitar or vihuela plucked softly under voices. Somewhere nearby, dice strike a wooden table. A mule stamps in its stall. The city does not sleep easily. Too much money has a way of keeping everyone awake. There are fortunes made here, yes, but also debts, lawsuits, rivalries, thefts, inspections, bribes, punishments, prayers, and schemes launched with great confidence and terrible math. In an indigenous household on the city's edge, the story feels different. The room is low and smoky. A child sleeps beneath woven cloth. A woman repairs a garment by dim flame, pulling thread through wool with steady hands. The fabric scratches your wrist when you touch it. A man returns late, shoulders grey with dust, eyes reddened by smoke and strain. No epic trumpet announces him. Only the door cloth shifts, the fire snaps, and someone makes room near the warmth. This, too, is Potosi, not just output, not just empire, but domestic endurance under the shadow of silver. Religion wraps itself around the mountain in complicated ways. Catholic churches rise across the city, while Andean beliefs and practices persist, adapt, and mingle under pressure. Miners make offerings for protection, sometimes to saints, sometimes to powerful beings associated with the earth and underground. A well-known figure in later mining culture is El Tío, the spirit of the mine, represented in underground shrines. He's treated with cigarettes, coca, alcohol, and respect, because when you work inside a mountain, politeness toward invisible landlords feels sensible. You stand once more outside the mine entrance, the city lights flickering below. The cold touches your cheeks like a damp cloth. The mountain is dark now, except for small lamps moving near its openings. Those lights look fragile against so much stone. Somewhere inside, tools strike rock. Somewhere in town, silver is counted. Somewhere across the ocean, people who will never smell this dust are already planning what the metal can buy. Potosi teaches a hard truth in a soft voice. World connection is not always gentle. The same silver that links markets and empires can also bind communities to forced labour, poison, debt, and separation. Treasure can create roads, ships, coins, and cities, but it can also leave silence in homes and scars in hillsides. You breathe slowly in the freezing air. The mountain keeps its shape against the stars, immense, beautiful, and troubling. Its silver has travelled farther than most human dreams, yet its first journey began here, in cold tunnels, in burning patios, in hands made rough by work. The treasure that connected the world rises from a place where the wind never quite warms, and where every gleam carries the memory of stone. You step onto a deck that moves beneath you like a sleeping animal. The night sea is almost black, except where moonlight breaks across the waves in long, trembling lines. Ropes creak overhead. Canvas snaps softly in the wind. Somewhere below, wood groans with every rise and fall of the hull, as if the ship is quietly reconsidering its career choices. The air smells of salt, tar, damp wool, old barrels, fish, sweat, and the sour breath of men who have been eating ship biscuit for too many days. Your hand closes around a rail polished by storms and palms. It is sticky with salt. This is the world of silver at sea, where treasure stops being a weight in a chest and becomes a risk stretched across oceans. The coins, bars, and ingots below deck have already passed through miners, assayers, mule trains, mint workers, officials, guards, and merchants. Now they must survive reefs, rot, hunger, confusion, privateers, hurricanes, bad maps, worse decisions, and captains with the confidence of men who cannot see underwater. A mainstream historical fact rises with the swell from the 16th century into the early 19th century. Spanish galleons carried vast amounts of American silver across both the Atlantic and the Pacific. The Manila galleon route connected Acapulco in New Spain with Manila in the Philippines, beginning in the 1560s and lasting until 1815. Across the Pacific went silver, especially from Spanish America. Across the return route came silk, porcelain, lacquerware, spices, ivory, and other Asian goods. The ocean became a long, dangerous bridge made of wind. You stand near the mainmast as sailors trim the sails. Their bare feet slap against wet planks. The rigging hums. A lantern swings. spilling gold light across coils of rope. Below, chests are wedged tightly among cargo. Silver is heavy, so heavy that it changes the behaviour of a ship. Load too much in the wrong place, and the vessel becomes sluggish, unstable, and rather committed to making everyone nervous. Treasure is wonderful until it starts arguing with ballast. The galleon is a floating town, warehouse, fortress, prison, chapel, and kitchen, all poorly ventilated. You hear prayers at dawn, curses by noon, snores at night, and rats whenever they feel like making announcements. Passengers crowd with sailors, soldiers, merchants, servants, officials, and sometimes missionaries. Chickens protest from cages, water barrels leak, food spoils. The ship's carpenter listens to the hull with grave attention, tapping and testing, because a small crack at sea can become a very persuasive sermon on humility. At Acapulco, the Pacific voyage begins in heat and noise. You walk along a harbour bright with sun, where the smell of fruit, sweat, salt, smoke, and mule dung rolls through the air. Silver arrives from inland by pack train, guarded and counted with nervous care. Officials inspect, merchants bargain, port workers grunt under loads, and everyone seems to be shouting about something important. The cargo goes aboard wrapped, boxed, sealed, recorded, and blessed, because when people send fortunes across the largest ocean on Earth, they generally prefer all available paperwork and divine assistance. The crossing to Manila can last months. Days become a slow repetition of wind, horizon, creaking planks, and meals that make you nostalgic for almost anything fresh. The sun burns white on the deck. At night, damp cold slips through clothing. Your blanket feels stiff with salt. Your lips crack. You learn the sounds of the ship the way a village child learns the voices of neighbours, the complaint of the rudder, the sigh of sailcloth, the slap of loose rope, the deep knock of cargo shifting below. Historians still argue whether the Manila galleons should be understood mainly as a Spanish imperial project, a Chinese commercial magnet, a Mexican colonial enterprise, or a truly trans-Pacific system held together by many communities at once. The official flags were Spanish, yes, but the appetite for silver in Asian markets, the labour of indigenous and mixed communities in New Spain, the skills of Filipino shipbuilders and sailors, and the networks of Chinese merchants in Manila all shaped the route. Empire liked to sign its name on things. Reality, as usual, had more co-authors. You reach Manila in a burst of humidity. The air feels thick enough to drink. Rain steams from wooden roofs. The harbour smells of river mud, spices, coconut oil, fish sauce, wet hemp, and tropical flowers opening in the heat. Chinese junks crowd the water. Spanish officials wait with documents. Local labourers move cargo through streets where languages overlap like woven mats. Silver flows into shops and warehouses, and goods from across Asia gather in return. In the market, you touch silk so smooth it seems almost liquid. Porcelain rings under a fingernail with a bright, clean note. Lacquered boxes shine like still water. Bundles of cinnamon, cloves, pepper, and incense fill the air with warm sweetness. These objects are not decorative extras in the silver story. They are the reason the silver keeps moving. Desire pulls as strongly as command. People want beauty, flavour, status, comfort, novelty, and profitable resale. Very noble motives, naturally, with a little shopping enthusiasm in the mix. Then the ocean calls again. The return voyage from Manila to Acapulco is often harder because ships must ride winds and currents northward before turning east across the Pacific. The route depends on knowledge slowly gathered through experience, failure, and observation. Sailors watch birds, clouds, currents, stars, and the moods of captains, which are not always helpful navigational instruments. Storms can tear sails, split masts, flood holds, and scatter cargo. A galleon loaded with silk and porcelain may look magnificent in harbour, but in a typhoon it becomes a large wooden argument with the sky. Across the Atlantic, another silver world moves under different clouds. Fleets gather at Caribbean ports, especially places like Havana, before crossing toward Spain. Treasure from American mines is brought to ports such as Veracruz and Portobello, guarded through dangerous waters, then organised into convoys. The system exists because a lone treasure ship is a tempting target. Basically, a floating invitation to every privateer with ambition and a flexible attitude toward property rights. You stand in Havana as a fleet prepares to sail. The harbour is hot, bright, and tense. Palm leaves rattle in the wind. Ship bells ring. Sailors load barrels of water, salted meat, biscuit, and gunpowder. Soldiers check weapons. Priests move among crews with blessings. Officials count crates with the severe expression of men who suspect everyone. Probably correctly. The smell of tar, sugar, tobacco, sweat, and seaweed fills your chest. Silver waits below deck in coins and bars, quiet as moonlight and twice as troublesome. Pirates and privateers haunt the edges of this world, though the bedtime version can leave out the messier details and keep the mood safely candlelit. Some raiders are independent criminals, others carry letters of marque, making them officially approved thieves, which is a delightful little bureaucratic costume. English, Dutch, and French rivals all watch Spanish treasure routes with interest. A treasure fleet can fund wars, pay debts, and decorate royal ambitions. Capturing even part of one can make reputations overnight. A quirky tidbit slips in with the coins themselves. The Spanish piece of 8 became so widely trusted that it circulated across the Americas, Europe, Africa, and Asia for centuries. In some places it was cut into smaller pieces, giving rise to the phrase pieces of 8 and later associations with bits. So when a parrot in a pirate tale squawks about pieces of 8, it is accidentally giving a small lecture on global monetary history. Quite scholarly for a bird, honestly. Storms remain more dangerous than pirates. The sea does not care whose king owns the cargo. You feel that truth when clouds pile high and green-black over the horizon. Wind rises, the deck tilts sharply, rain hits like thrown gravel. Men shout into the roar, ropes whip. The smell of fear mixes with wet wood and bilge water. Below, silver chests strain against their lashings. Porcelain cracks. Barrels roll. The ship climbs one wave and drops into the next. And for a moment, every empire on earth feels very small. Shipwrecks turn treasure into archaeology. A chest falls through broken planks, settles into sand, and waits in darkness with fish for company. Coins grow dull. Wood disappears. Coral claims iron. Centuries later, divers may find scattered silver and imagine the lost voyage around it. Yet even wrecks tell only part of the story. Most silver does not sink. It arrives, gets counted, taxed, paid out, melted, spent, hoarded, and sent onward again. You stand in Seville, then Cadiz, where Atlantic silver enters European finance. The streets smell of river water, oranges, horse sweat, candle wax, and damp stone. Merchants crowd counting rooms. Bankers extend credit. Crown officials claim their share. Debts from wars, court expenses, and imperial administration swallow huge sums almost as soon as they appear. Silver seems infinite in legend, but ledgers have a way of making even treasure look tired. The metal also helps connect worlds that remain unequal and often violent. It moves through forced labour, colonial extraction, indigenous survival strategies, African enslavement, Asian commerce, European warfare, and local ambition in dozens of ports. A coin minted under one crown may pass into hands that use it for purposes no ruler intended. It buys rice, silk, horses, weapons, land, medicine, passage, loyalty, silence, and sometimes a little peace. Night settles over the sea again. You lean against the rail as the galleon cuts through dark water. Stars tremble above the mast. The wake glows faintly where disturbed plankton sparks in the blackness. Tiny lights flashing like scattered silver dust. Below deck, the treasure is still, but everything around it moves: wind, waves, markets, empires, prayers, rumours, greed, skill, luck. The world is being connected not by one smooth plan, but by thousands of crossings, each one fragile, expensive, and uncertain. You listen to the ship breathe. Wood creaks. Canvas sighs. A sailor hums softly near the bow. The ocean spreads in every direction, immense and patient. Somewhere beyond the horizon waits another port, another ledger, another hand reaching for the cool, bright weight of silver. And in that hush between wave and stars, you feel how the treasure of the earth became the restless treasure of the sea. You step into a room where silver has left the mine, the mint, and the ship, and has become something intimate. A candle burns low on a table. Its flame leans whenever a draught slips beneath the door. The air smells of beeswax, roasted meat, damp wool, polished wood, and the faint sharp scent of metal recently rubbed clean. Outside, rain taps against shutters. Inside, silver waits in bowls, cups, spoons, buckles, buttons, mirrors, reliquaries, and little boxes that hold powders, pins, herbs, secrets, and family pride. You reach toward a spoon and feel its cool handle settle into your fingers. It is smoother than bone, heavier than wood, quieter than iron. It feels civilized, which is often just another way of saying expensive. Silver at the table is not merely useful, it performs. It catches candlelight and multiplies it. It tells guests that the household has wealth, taste, and perhaps a charming willingness to make dinner slightly competitive. A polished cup glows beside dark bread. A plate reflects the red edge of wine. A salt cellar rises at the centre like a tiny monument to both seasoning and social order. You sit down carefully, because in many wealthy households, table manners are less about comfort and more about proving you are not raised by wolves, even if wolves might be more relaxed company. One mainstream historical fact rests among the dishes in early modern Europe. Silver plate became a major store of wealth for elite and prosperous households. Plates, cups, candlesticks, ewers, basins, and serving dishes could be displayed during feasts, locked away afterward, pledged as security, melted in emergencies, or remade as fashions changed. Silverware was not just decoration. It was savings you could eat beside, which is admittedly more dramatic than a bank account. You watch servants arrange a meal, their shoes whisper across rushes on the floor. A knife is placed at one setting, a spoon at another, a cup turned upright with a soft ring. Forks exist in some places and periods, but their spread is uneven. In parts of Europe, the fork is at first treated as a luxury, a curiosity, or even a suspicious affectation. Some people look at it and wonder why fingers, bread, and knives are suddenly not good enough. Humanity has never adopted new table habits without someone muttering in a corner. A quirky tidbit glints between the candles in medieval and early modern Europe. The salt cellar could mark rank at the table. Important guests sat above the salt, closer to the host, while lower status diners sat farther away. Salt itself was valuable, but a grand silver salt cellar turned seasoning into architecture. Imagine being socially judged by your distance from a condiment. History can be very elegant and very petty at the same time. You lift a cup. The rim touches your lip with a chill that quickly warms. Silver conducts heat well, so it takes on the temperature of the room, the hand, the wine, the breath near it. This gives it a living quality. A silver spoon in hot broth warms quickly. A silver goblet in winter can feel almost icy at first. That small shock reminds you that silver is never fully passive. It responds. The table is only one stage. You move into a workshop where silver becomes shape under patient hands. The room is cluttered with tools, charcoal, leather aprons, files, punches, small hammers, crucibles, and scraps saved carefully because no sensible silversmith throws away value. The smell is warmer here: coal smoke, oil, ash, sweat, and polishing compounds. A hammer taps a sheet of silver with a rhythm almost gentle enough for sleep. Tap, turn, tap, turn. The metal slowly rises into a bowl. A silversmith listens as much as he looks. Silver has a voice under the hammer. Too hard, and it may crack. Too cold after repeated working, and it becomes stubborn. So it is annealed, heated until the internal strain relaxes, then worked again. You see the dull red glow, the plunge into water, the hiss of steam, the sudden smell of wet hot metal. The craftsman's fingers are rough, blackened around the nails, but his touch is precise. Luxury is often born from hands that never get to enjoy it at leisure. Patterns are chased into surfaces. Flowers curl along handles. Saints appear on reliquaries. Family arms are engraved on cups. A maker's mark is stamped in a hidden place, a tiny declaration that this object came from a particular workshop, under particular rules. Assay marks may certify purity. In cities with strong guild traditions, silverwork is watched closely because metal quality matters. A dishonest alloy does not merely cheat a buyer, it insults the system of trust that lets fine objects circulate. Historians still argue over whether the expansion of silver tableware was driven more by genuine refinement, competitive status display, expanding commercial wealth, or the practical need to keep wealth in portable form. The answer depends on place, class, and century. A noble family may display silver to proclaim lineage. A merchant may buy it to prove arrival. A church may commission it for devotion. A widow may keep a cup because it can be pawned if harvests fail. Silver is beautiful, yes, but it is also deeply strategic, which makes it slightly less innocent on the sideboard. You leave the dining room and enter a bedchamber. Here silver becomes more private. A small mirror rests on a table, its backing polished bright enough to return a blurred face. Glass mirrors backed with metal will become more common in certain wealthy settings, but polished silver itself has long served as a reflective surface. You lean close, candlelight softens your features, your face appears pale, wavering, almost dreamlike. Mirrors have always made people uneasy because they promise truth but deliver atmosphere. A silver mirror is especially good at this little trick. On the table beside it sit combs, pins, a scent bottle, and a small silver box. The box opens with a faint click. Inside may be cosmetics, medicinal powders, or treasured fragments. Silver's association with cleanliness and protection gives it a special place near the body. Rings, brooches, clasps, belt fittings, and amulets rest against skin and cloth. They mark marriage, rank, devotion, fashion, inheritance, or simply the pleasure of wearing something that shines when you move. In churches, temples, and shrines, silver takes on sacred brightness. You walk into a cool stone interior where incense hangs in blue-grey layers. Footsteps echo softly. Candles flicker before images, relics, or altars. Silver lamps, chalices, reliquaries, offering bowls, and ritual vessels catch the light. Their glow feels quieter than gold, more lunar, more contemplative. A silver reliquary may hold what believers consider holy remains. A chalice may carry wine in a ceremony where matter and meaning fold together. A votive object may represent gratitude for healing, childbirth, survival at sea, or rescue from danger. The sound inside the sacred space is subdued, a whisper, a bell, the rustle of cloth, the soft clink of a chain against a hanging lamp. Silver here does not merely show wealth, It helps create atmosphere. It cools the eye. It gathers light around devotion. It makes belief tangible, touchable, polishable. Very practical for the divine, one might say. Though heaven rarely comments on interior design, silver also enters medicine, where fact, observation, and hope mingle in complicated ways. People notice that water kept in silver vessels can remain pleasant, and that silver seems resistant to foulness compared with some materials. Long before modern microbiology explained silver's antimicrobial properties, traditions grow around its purifying power. Silver leaf, powders, cups, instruments, and compounds appear in various medical practices across cultures. Some uses are helpful, some symbolic, some ineffective, and some better left politely in the past with other confident old remedies. You pass a physician's room. Shelves hold jars of herbs, oils, minerals, and dried things best not inspected too closely near bedtime. The air smells of lavender, vinegar, dust, and bitter roots. A silver spoon measures a preparation. A small cup is offered to a patient. The metal gives reassurance. It feels clean. It feels costly. It feels like someone is trying. In medicine, that feeling has always mattered. Even when the theory behind it is wearing mismatched shoes, superstition gathers around silver like mist, because it reflects light and resists tarnish when cared for. People often imagine it as protective. It appears in charms, wedding gifts, baptismal cups, lucky coins, and objects meant to guard infants or travellers. In some cultures, silver bells or ornaments are placed on children, animals, or clothing to repel harm. The small ringing sound becomes the part of protection. You hear it in a courtyard where a child toddles past, a tiny silver charm tapping softly against fabric. The sound is delicate, almost like a star learning to speak. Silver tarnishes, too, of course. Leave it exposed, and a dark film creeps over the shine. This is not decay in the dramatic sense. It is chemistry, mainly reaction with sulfur compounds in the air. But to a household servant responsible for polishing, chemistry is just another word for extra work. You sit in a scullery where someone rubs a spoon with cloth and fine powder. The repeated motion is soothing to watch. Grey-black tarnish lifts away. Light returns gradually, not all at once. The smell is dusty, faintly acrid, mixed with soap and damp linen. Objects live many lives. A christening cup becomes a child's inheritance. A broken spoon is melted into a buckle. A fashionable ewer becomes old-fashioned and is remade. A church vessel is hidden during war. A family plate is pawned in a hard year, redeemed in a better one, then sold by grandchildren who prefer cash, which is sentimental in its own brutally efficient way. Silver survives by changing form. It is memory with a melting point. You sit again near the candlelit table. Dinner has ended. The room is quiet now. Grease cools on plates. Wine stains the inside of cups. The fire settles into red coals. Someone laughs softly in another room. Someone counts the spoons, because hospitality is noble, but inventory is wiser. The silver no longer dazzles with public ceremony. It rests, smudged by fingers, warmed by use, carrying traces of lips, broth, prayer, polish, debt, vanity, love, and fear. In this domestic world, silver connects people not through grand roots, but through daily gestures. You lift, pour, reflect, bless, measure, fasten, heal, remember, and display. The treasure of the world has come close enough to touch your mouth, your wrist, your face, your faith. Its global journey becomes personal, quiet, and almost sleepy in the candlelight. Silver is still wealth, still power, still ambition, but here, beside cooling wax and folded linen, it is also the soft gleam of ordinary life trying to feel secure. You wake into a world of steam, paper, glass, and nervous counting. The street outside is slick with morning rain. Wheels hiss through puddles, horses clop over stone, their harness rings jingling with a tired little music. Somewhere nearby, a factory whistle cuts the damp air, long and mournful, as if the building itself regrets getting up early. Coal smoke hangs low between brick walls. It smells bitter, greasy, and warm. You pull your coat closer, feeling wool scratch at your wrist, and step toward a financial district where silver is no longer only tableware, temple light, or coin in a pouch. It has become a problem for governments, a tool for machines, and a source of public panic. The city is awake, but not calm. Newspapers slap onto counters, telegraph wires hum faintly overhead, clerks hurry through fog with ledgers under their arms, shop windows glitter with watches, cameras, plated spoons, and polished tea sets. Behind heavy doors, bankers discuss reserves, ratios, coinage, debt, and public confidence, which is a polite phrase meaning everyone hopes nobody starts screaming. Silver has entered the modern age, and the modern age is very fond of turning useful things into arguments. One mainstream historical fact sits at the centre of this anxious century. During the 19th century, many countries struggled over whether money should be based on silver, gold, or both. The system known as bimetallism tried to use both metals at a fixed legal ratio, but market prices did not always obey government wishes. Because metals, annoyingly, do not read legislation. As gold discoveries, silver production, industrial demand, and international trade shifted, the relative value of gold and silver changed. That change could shake banks, farms, wages, prices, debts, and elections. You enter a bank lobby. The floor is marble and cold underfoot. Ink smells sharp at the counters. Brass lamps glow under cloudy glass. A teller stacks coins with quick, dry clicks. The sound is satisfying, almost hypnotic, until you remember that each stack represents somebody's rent, loan, harvest, inheritance, or complete financial headache. Silver coins still circulate in many places, but paper money and bank credit are expanding. Money's becoming less visible, more abstract, and therefore much easier to worry about at dinner. A farmer stands near the counter, hat in his hands. His coat smells faintly of wet hay and horse. He owes money borrowed when prices were higher. If the money supply tightens and prices fall, his debt becomes harder to repay. To him, more silver coinage might mean easier money, higher prices for crops, and a little breathing room. A creditor may see the same proposal as danger, inflation, and repayment in money worth less than expected. One metal, two nightmares. Economics has always had a gift for making everyone feel personally betrayed. In the United States, silver becomes a fierce political issue. The Coinage Act of 1873 later earns the nickname the Crime of 1873 among critics who believe silver was unfairly pushed aside when the country moved away from free silver coinage. Supporters of gold argue that sound money protects stability and international trust. Supporters of silver argue that expanding coinage could relieve debtors and farmers. The debate becomes moral, emotional, and theatrical. Very theatrical. People do not merely disagree about metal, they accuse each other of ruining civilization, which is how you know politics has truly warmed up. You hear a campaign speech in a crowded hall. The room smells of damp coats, lamp oil, cigar smoke, and human excitement. Boots scuff the wooden floor. Someone coughs. Someone cheers too early and then commits to it. The speaker's voice rises, promising justice through money, dignity through coinage, rescue from hard times. Silver is no longer just mined or minted. It is imagined as salvation. That is a heavy burden for any element, even one with excellent shine. A quirky tidbit glitters from the American West. Silver mining towns could appear with astonishing speed and vanish almost as quickly when veins declined or prices collapsed. Some had opera houses, newspapers, saloons, assay offices, and optimistic street grids laid across places where yesterday there had been sagebrush and wind. A town could call itself permanent while half its buildings were still raw boards, and the main entertainment was watching someone fall into mud. Boomtown confidence is a special human perfume made of dust, whiskey, ink, and denial. You walk through one such mining town at dusk. The air is dry and cold. Sawdust spills from a carpentry shop. Mules breathe steam outside an ore office. A saloon piano bangs out a tune slightly wounded by enthusiasm. Men with silver claims speak loudly about richness, depth, and certainty. 3 words that become more suspicious the more often they are repeated. An assayer weighs samples in a back room, his scales delicate beneath rough rafters. The smell of acids, lamp oil, and tobacco clings to the air. Outside, the mountain is dark, indifferent, and probably not listening. Silver production expands dramatically in the 19th century, especially with major discoveries such as the Comstock lode in Nevada, first found in 1859. New technologies, railroads, pumps, explosives, and industrial-scale processing make extraction more intense. Ore moves faster, capital moves faster, rumour moves fastest of all. Shares in mining companies rise and fall on reports from underground, some accurate, some hopeful, some produced by gentlemen whose relationship with truth is more decorative than structural. You step into a stock exchange. The sound hits like surf. Voices shout prices. Papers wave. A chalkboard fills with numbers. The air smells of sweat, wool, dust, ink, and panic kept just barely respectable by waistcoats. Silver mines become investments bought by people who may never see a shaft, touch or cough in a processing room. Wealth becomes paper claims on underground possibility. A vein in a mountain becomes a number on a board. A number becomes a fortune. A fortune becomes nothing by lunchtime. Very efficient. In its own horrifying way, scholars continue to debate how much silver politics in the late 19th century was driven by real economic distress among farmers and workers, and how much by party strategy, regional identity, mining interests, and broader fears about modern capitalism. The speeches are loud, the cartoons vivid, the data complicated. Some communities clearly felt crushed by debt and falling prices. Some investors clearly wanted profit from expanded silver demand. Some politicians rode the issue because it gave anger a bright, simple object. History rarely hands you a single lever and says, pull here for the whole explanation. While markets argue, machines discover silver's other talents. You enter a photography studio. The mood changes. The room is dim, almost theatrical. Heavy curtains soften the daylight. Chemicals sit in labelled bottles. The air smells of alcohol, varnish, dust, and sharp developing solutions. A camera stands on a tripod like a solemn black insect. Silver compounds are essential to early photography because certain silver salts darken when exposed to light. That sensitivity makes it possible to capture images on plates, paper, and film. Silver learns to hold shadows. A family sits for a portrait. The father stiffens in his best coat. The mother arranges her skirt. A child fidgets with heroic commitment. The photographer asks everyone to remain still. Time slows. Light passes through the lens on a treated surface. Silver chemistry receives the image. Later, in the dark room, trays rock gently under red light. Liquid laps against paper. A face appears gradually, ghost-like, emerging from milky blankness. The sound is quiet glass clinking, water dripping, paper sliding through solution. It feels like summoning memory from fog. This is one of silver's strangest modern roles. It becomes the metal of remembrance, weddings, wars, babies, factories, landscapes, prisoners, presidents, actresses, criminals, grandparents, and ordinary people leaning awkwardly beside chairs all pass through silver chemistry. Billions of images eventually depend on it. Silver no longer merely reflects your face in a polished surface. It records it. Quite the promotion. Really. From shiny spoon to keeper of human emotion. Factories find other uses. Silver conducts electricity better than any other metal. It resists corrosion. It can be used in contacts, switches, solders, specialized instruments, mirrors, batteries, and later many electronic components. In the industrial world, its beauty remains, but its usefulness broadens. You stand inside a workshop where delicate electrical parts are assembled under lamplight. The air smells of hot dust, machine oil, shellac, and metal filings. Wires lie coiled like sleeping threads. A worker touches a silver contact with tweezers, careful not because it is decorative, but because a small failure can interrupt a signal, a machine, a measurement, a message. Mirrors also change. Glass backed with reflective metal becomes more widely manufactured, and silvering techniques improve bright reflective surfaces. You pass a mirror factory where workers handle glass sheets with tense precision. The room smells of chemicals and wet wood. Light flashes from polished surfaces stacked upright like frozen water. A mirror is now more common, more domestic, less magical, though it still catches people making faces when they think nobody's watching. Silver plating expands access to silver's look without requiring solid silver's cost. Electroplating, developed in the 19th century, allows a thin layer of silver to be deposited onto base metal. Middle-class households can own shining cutlery and tea services that signal respectability at a more manageable price. The dining table becomes a stage for aspiration. A plated spoon says, "We are doing nicely," while quietly hoping nobody rubs too hard. Yet this abundance also changes value. When more silver floods markets, prices can fall. When governments stop buying or coining silver at expected rates, miners and regions suffer. When investors expect support and don't receive it, panic spreads. In 1893, the United States experiences a severe financial crisis, and silver policy forms part of the wider turmoil. Banks fail, railroads collapse, unemployment rises. The mood in counting rooms turns from confident to pale. You walk past a closed factory gate. Rain taps on iron bars. Men stand nearby with hands in pockets, collars turned up against the cold. The air smells of wet coal dust and stale bread. A newspaper headline darkens under drizzle. Inside homes, families stretch meals, pawn objects, delay rent, and listen for work. The debate over silver is not abstract here. Money supply, credit, prices, and employment become the texture of daily life. You feel it in an empty purse. You hear it in a landlord's knock. You taste it in thin soup. By the early 20th century, silver's role as the foundation of major monetary systems weakens as gold standards, fiat currencies, central banks, and modern finance reshape money. But silver does not disappear. It slips from the center of monetary power into industry, photography, jewelry, tableware, medicine, and investment. It becomes less royal, perhaps, but more versatile. A metal can lose one throne and find 100 workshops. Night falls over the industrial city. Electric lights glow in shop windows brighter and steadier than candles. A tram bell rings. Rain shines on the pavement like dark glass. In a photographer's window, portraits stare outward with silver-fixed eyes. In a bank vault, coins sleep in bags. In a factory, tiny silver parts wait inside machines. In a pawn shop, a plated teapot reflects the face of someone deciding whether memory can be sold for groceries. You pause beneath a street lamp and listen. The modern world hums, clicks, rings, and counts. Silver has become a metal of markets and mechanisms, argument and image, speculation and signal. It is no longer only the treasure people hold, it is the material through which they remember, communicate, invest, panic, and pretend everything is under control. The rain softens the noise, the city blurs at the edges, and somewhere behind brick walls and ledger pages, silver keeps its pale, patient shine. You stand in a room that hums softly while the world sleeps. There is no furnace glow, no royal mint, no storm-dark ocean under your feet. Instead, there is a desk lamp, a phone charging beside a cup of cooling tea, a laptop breathing warm air through a tiny vent, and a thin line of city light behind curtains. The room smells faintly of dust, cotton sheets, plastic warmed by use, and rain drying on pavement outside. You touch the smooth glass of a screen. It feels cool at first, then slowly takes the warmth of your fingertip. Hidden inside this quiet little rectangle, silver is working. It is not showing off. That may be silver's great modern talent. In the present day, silver often hides inside things that do not look precious at all: switches, circuit boards, solar cells, medical dressings, batteries, car components, water filters, and tiny electrical contacts. Its shine is no longer always meant for the eye. Sometimes the most important silver is buried in a device, doing the humble work of carrying current, resisting corrosion, reflecting light, or slowing the growth of microbes. Very glamorous, obviously. The treasure of kings has taken a job inside your remote control. One mainstream historical fact sits quietly in your hand: silver is the most electrically conductive metal known, which makes it valuable in electronics and specialized industrial uses. Copper is cheaper and widely used, naturally, because budgets exist and engineers enjoy sleeping at night. But where performance matters, silver appears in small, precise amounts. It becomes part of the invisible nervous system of modern life. You walk through an electronics workshop. The light is white and steady. Machines click in careful rhythms. A technician leans over a bench, guided by magnification, tweezers, solder, and practiced patience. The air smells of warm circuitry, flux, clean gloves, and metal warmed just enough to soften. A tiny contact, silver-coated, rests in place smaller than a fingernail clipping. It is not dramatic. No trumpets. No crown. Yet when a signal passes through it, a message moves, a motor responds, a sensor wakes, a machine remembers its task. Silver has always been a connector. Now it connects impulses too fast for the senses. You do not hear the electrons move. You hear the result: a phone vibration on a wooden table, a camera shutter sound, a refrigerator motor starting at midnight, a train door chiming closed, a hospital monitor beeping steadily beside a bed. These are modern silver sounds, not ringing coins or dining spoons, but soft signals in the fabric of daily life. You step outside into morning. Rooftops glisten after rain. On a building nearby, solar panels lie in neat dark rows, reflecting the pale sky. The air smells washed clean, with wet concrete, leaves, and a faint trace of exhaust. Silver plays a role here too, especially in photovoltaic cells, where silver paste helps collect and conduct the electricity produced when sunlight strikes the panel. The ancient metal of moonlight now helps gather sunlight. History does enjoy a neat little poetic turn. Even when dressed as engineering, a worker wipes moisture from a panel frame. The surface is slick under the cloth. Light spreads across it in blue-black squares. You imagine morning sun travelling 93 million miles, landing quietly, and being turned into current through layered materials. Careful design, and a modest contribution from silver. It is not magic, although it would certainly look like magic to many people from earlier centuries. To be fair, it still looks a little like magic if you have not had coffee. In hospitals and clinics, Silver takes on another old role in a new form. You walk down a quiet corridor where rubber soles whisper on polished floors. The air smells of antiseptic, laundry, plastic packaging, and filtered air. Some wound dressings use silver because certain silver compounds and ions can help limit microbial growth. This does not make silver a miracle cure, and one must be very cautious with grand claims, because health marketing has been known to wear tap shoes. Still, the connection between silver and cleanliness has deep roots, now studied through chemistry rather than superstition. A nurse opens a sterile packet. The sound is crisp, papery, precise. A dressing unfolds between gloved fingers. There is no sparkle, no ornament, no luxury. There is only care. Silver, once polished for display, is now placed where healing needs quiet assistance. The old association with purity has not vanished. It has changed clothes. A quirky tidbit comes from the sky. Silver iodide has been used in cloud seeding, a technique meant to encourage precipitation under certain conditions. Tiny particles are released into clouds, where they can help ice crystals form. It is not a simple rain button, sadly. Humanity would absolutely label that button badly and press it during picnics. But the idea that silver can be scattered into clouds to coax weather is wonderfully strange. The metal that once resembled moonlight becomes a whisper sent into the atmosphere. Yet modern silver is not only science, it is still intimate. You open a drawer in a family home. Inside rests a tarnished bracelet, a small pendant, a baby cup, a ring wrapped in tissue, perhaps a medal from a grandparent's drawer. The air smells of cedar, old paper, lavender sachet, and time. Your fingers lift a necklace, and the chain slides over your palm with a cool, fluid touch. It leaves a faint grey mark where tarnish has gathered. This silver is not industrial. It is remembered. A grandmother may pass down earrings. A father may keep cufflinks he never wears. A couple may exchange rings. A traveller may bring home a charm from a distant city. A child may receive a small spoon engraved with initials and a date, then spend decades wondering what anyone is supposed to do with one ceremonial spoon. Silver survives as heirloom because it lives in the middle distance between precious and reachable. Gold can feel remote. Silver is often more companionable. It shines, but it also scratches. It tarnishes, but it can be cleaned. It ages with you, which is rude and comforting at once. You sit at a kitchen table while someone polishes an old piece of silver. The cloth darkens with each slow circle. The smell is faintly chemical, mixed with soap, wood, and coffee. A blackened surface becomes bright in patches, then brighter still. Reflections return unevenly, a hand, a window, a lamp, a face bending close. There is something calming about polishing. It does not reverse time exactly. It only clears a place where memory can catch the light again. Collectors still seek silver coins and bars. Investors still watch prices rise and fall. Jewelers still shape it into rings, chains, and earrings. Artists still love its softness and shine. Musicians still play instruments with silver parts or silver plating, especially in certain flutes and brass instruments. In a small music room, you hear a flute note float into the air, clear and cool, while the metal under the player's fingers warms from touch. Sound, breath, and silver meet for a moment, then vanish. Historians and archaeologists still argue about how future generations will interpret modern silver use. Will they see the present age as an industrial chapter, defined by electronics, solar panels, and medical applications? Will they focus on consumer objects, jewellery, and investment? Will they read discarded devices as the great hidden hoards of modern society, scattered not in buried jars but in drawers, landfills, recycling centres, and forgotten cables? The question is not silly. Every age leaves its treasure in the places it forgets to clean. Recycling has become part of silver's story. You walk through a facility where all the electronics are sorted, broken down, and processed. The atmosphere is loud but organized. Conveyor belts move with rubbery murmurs. Plastic clicks against metal. Workers wear gloves and masks. The smell is dry, dusty, and faintly burnt, with a tang of old circuitry. Inside discarded phones and computers are tiny traces of precious metals, including silver. Not much in each object, perhaps, but multiplied by millions. These traces matter. There is a strange tenderness in this. A device once held photos, messages, alarms, maps, arguments, songs, recipes, and late-night searches for symptoms that were probably just tiredness. Then it becomes waste. Then it becomes material again. Silver can re-enter the stream of use, changing form as it has always done. Treasure is not still. It circulates, rests, tarnishes, breaks, melts, and returns. Modern demand also raises difficult questions. Mining continues, labour conditions, environmental damage, water use, energy costs, and pollution remain serious concerns in many places. Silver may help build cleaner technologies, but obtaining it is never weightless. A solar panel on a roof and a mine in a mountain belong to the same world. The shine is shared with dust. The current is shared with extraction. This does not erase silver's usefulness. It simply asks you to hold the whole object in your mind, not only the polished part. Even so, silver remains strangely gentle in the imagination. You see it in language: silver screen, silver lining, silver hair, silver anniversary, silver medal. It often suggests second place. Yes, which seems a little unfair for a metal that has been carrying civilization's errands for thousands of years. But it also suggests endurance, elegance, age, reflection, and hope after cloud. A silver lining is not the whole sky becoming bright. It is just the edge of darkness admitting light. That is a modest promise, and perhaps a better one. Now the room grows quieter. You return to the desk where the lamp glows softly. The phone screen dims. Rain has stopped. Somewhere outside, a late car passes with a wet whisper along the road. In the drawer, an old silver ring rests beside a cable, a receipt, and a key whose lock has probably vanished, because drawers are small museums curated by confusion. The ring is cool when you touch it. The cable nearby may contain silver too, hidden and practical. One piece remembers a person. One piece carries a signal. Both belong to the same pale family. The story of silver is not finished, but it has grown quiet enough to hold gently. It has moved through ritual, money, empire, labour, medicine, machinery, sunlight, and memory. It has been sacred and ordinary, beautiful and useful, treasured and forgotten. It has connected people through trade, longing, obligation, invention, and the simple human habit of passing bright things from one hand to another. And now, let the silver settle into stillness. Imagine its glow softening, no longer sharp, no longer counted, no longer weighed. It becomes a thin moon on water, a cool ring on a sleeping hand, a pale thread of light resting along the edge of a cloud. The world outside loosens its noise. The roads grow empty. The workshops close their doors. The ships are only shadows on calm water. Deep under mountains, the stone is silent on quiet tables. Old spoons lie folded in darkness, waiting for morning without hurry. You breathe in slowly, and the night breathes with you, cool, spacious, and kind. The treasure that crossed the world returns at last to a simple gleam, soft enough to dream beside, quiet enough to let you sleep.